Welcome back to another episode of the Resellers Mindset Podcast. My name is Mike, also known as the Used Book Guy on YouTube, along with my friend and fellow full-time reseller, Johnny B. We help people start and grow their reselling businesses from the ground up. We also have a weekly Zoom call and private Discord for all YouTube members. Head on over to youtube.com/usedbookguy to join the channel and gain access to the full-length podcast, Zoom call, and private Discord today. Let's get into this week's episode.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into episode 22, I believe. That's what we said, 10, 10, and 2. We actually have help, so we can do it today. We have Joji on the podcast today. This is a long-awaited call for me. He sells books, but in a completely different way than me and Johnny B, right? I'm the Amazon guy. Johnny B's the eBay guy. Now we got the combo can down here. Joji, who does basically utilizes both platforms to make his business work. We're just going to let him kind of take it away, introduce himself, kind of a little bit about himself, a little bit about his business. And then me and Johnny will pick his brain here a little bit because this is all brand new to both of us.
Yeah. Thanks for having me first. I appreciate it, Mike. Johnny, this is super awesome to be here. So my name's Joji. I'm a high school chemistry teacher, 28 years old. And basically I got in the game when I was like 22 years old. So I saw Steve Rakin on YouTube back when I was 22. So that's like 6 years ago now. I think that would have been 2016. And man, I was hooked from the beginning. I think the first thing I flipped was a CD. I think I bought it for like $1 at a Goodwill, flipped it for like $65. And I was like, dude, this is crazy. The power of Amazon FBA. And a little bit later on, I was in my senior year of my undergrad year. I realized that, hey, there's a lot of people on campus that have textbooks. And I honestly kind of completely missed the opportunity during my undergrad because I didn't learn about textbooks. I didn't really learn about Amazon FBA till my final year. But point is, got my undergraduate degree. Then I went to get my master's degree because I was going to get a teaching credential. And I realized that, dude, if you join the Facebook groups on campus, like the textbook exchange group, the Freedom for Sale group, there are people just posting up their textbooks. And these are not cheap textbooks. Like these are books, $70, $80, $100 plus. And like a lot of these people are like, hey, I want $20 for this book that sells for $100. So literally every single day, man, at this time I was also doing my internship with teaching as well. So I was also teaching a couple days during the week, but every day I was on campus, I was just filling up bags and bags of textbooks. And I sold, probably those 2 years to my master's, at least like 30,000 or so in textbooks. So I basically cash flowed my college and I graduated debt free because of it. And, got out of college with my teaching degree, went right into teaching high school chemistry. And I was like, dude, I still want to do Amazon FBA. I still want to do textbooks. But the problem was like, I don't really have the time to be on like I'm not on a college campus anymore. So I kind of had transition. That's kind of how I went down the rabbit hole of doing like OfferUp, online arbitrage, and then eventually going to eBay online arbitrage, and then learning about how to buy undervalued books on Amazon and flip them back on Amazon. So that's like a probably way too long way to explain that. What I do is I buy books online and then I flip them online.
So I have a question for you. How heavily, or if any at all, were you in thrifting before you decided to kind of take it online? Like, were you heavily out there, in thrift stores at some point, or did you kind of just skip that whole step that most of us kind of, your typical Amazon business is thrift stores, and then maybe you switch to something like you're doing?
Yeah, good question. I did a little bit of thrifting, not a ton, and I wasn't exclusively books. In the beginning, it was just anything. Because back in 2016, it was a wild, wild west, man. You could send in anything to Amazon and they didn't care. Like you can send in brand new board games, half the seals off. Like they wouldn't care. Like it was a wild, wild west back then. And I would say I did mostly garage sales and OfferUp. And I don't even think Facebook Marketplace was a thing at that time, or I wasn't aware of it. But I was mainly just garage sales and OfferUp because people would put a whole bunch of, books up, textbooks up on OfferUp locally. But also I was really into video games. So I did a lot of video game flipping, OfferUp deals, Craigslist deals. So yeah, I didn't really do much thrifting. I was kind of more directly with just interacting with people who had something that I wanted. And I was just hustling like that.
Kind of the same as you, right? Johnny, you really never got out there and really hit the thrift stores like full time, right?
Thrift store scene wasn't really my thing. I would go places and do bulk pickup kind of deal. And I still do that. I've been into thrifts, don't get me wrong. It's slower. It's just slower.
So I mean that's a huge point that I say all the time is you don't need thrift stores and you shouldn't be relying on thrift stores. Neither of these guys could care less if they go in a thrift store in the next 3 months. It does not matter to them. And you might be somebody that's thinking, well, I have one thrift store in my area, so this business isn't possible. And you could be the furthest thing from wrong with that kind of mindset, because these dudes are never in thrift stores. They're never dealing with the riffraff I got to deal with just to get in there, scan the shelf of books sometimes.
Well, yeah, because you never know if the manager's going to be in to do the buy it all, because I do bulk, right? And it's like, it's just, take me 2 weeks to buy the thrift store.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Joji, when you first because when you first got into eBay to Amazon, I mean, was there somebody that kind of like you kind of looked into or maybe had a session with to kind of understand it more? Because there's not really, at least that I see out there on YouTube, there's not that many people that'll sit down and kind of show you the way it's supposed to be done, like you do with your lives and everything on YouTube. I don't know of anybody else on YouTube that kind of would be somebody that if you're not there, who else is there to kind of show you the way? How did you learn, basically?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. I think you'd have to back up a little bit. I'm sure you've both heard of a software called eFlip. I'm sure you've heard of that. You've heard of Zen Arbitrage. So back in, I think eFlip came out in 2017 or 2018. But when that product came out, I was super interested in that online arbitrage tool. So that's what I started with. And I think that's where I got the gears moving with like, okay, you have the opportunity to buy books on Amazon and flip on Amazon. So I think that was the beginning. I think Caleb Roth, he's the one who created that software. So it was kind of him. He has a lot of recordings with that software specifically, but the idea of being able to buy a book online and then resell it online, the online arbitrage, sort of like that's where that idea came from. As far as eBay to Amazon flips, that is actually something that Fields of Profit. You've heard of Warner Fields?
Yeah.
So I think he came out like maybe last year with a video on like how to use FlipMine, which is a software for eBay to Amazon online arbitrage. So I looked at one of his videos, and yeah, he's also a great teacher. He went through like how you could potentially find some books. And so from there, that's kind of all I needed to know. I just needed to know like what tool we could use. And, you know, if we back to 2017, I was actually back then I was buying books on Amazon and reselling them on Amazon, but kind of the way that I buy books now has kind of evolved since then. But yeah, I think buying books on eBay specifically was maybe about last year, like early last year when I learned from Warner.
Do you ever go the other way around from Amazon to eBay?
Yeah, some people ask me that all the time, and I've never done that. I've never tried doing that. I think it's probably possible, but I think it's probably just way more likely to go eBay to Amazon rather than Amazon to eBay. Sure. For a number of reasons, which we could talk about. But yeah, I've never tried that, but I'd be interested to know if someone has done
Will
that.
the software let you? Like, say if we
No,
pulled up
the FlipMine will not. No, FlipMine will not let you do that.
Okay, we can't just hit the reverse button and then it goes the other way.
Yeah, I'm curious. So why would you guys? So my understanding is Amazon is king, right? So I'm curious to know both of your thoughts. Like, why do you think I have a couple of ideas maybe, but I'm curious what your ideas would be. Why do you think a book would sell better on eBay rather than Amazon?
I'm guilty of doing this. I send books in Amazon all the time that are signed, and I just put them under the normal price. So maybe people are putting, maybe they have a condition note. Not, I don't put in the condition note that it's signed, but maybe some people do. So maybe there'd be a software that can pull all the Amazon book listings that are signed by the author, and you're going to get most likely more for that stuff on eBay because it's more of a collectible niche market for those kind of things versus Amazon, where they really don't care if it's signed. It's going to be your condition, your good condition that's going to sell. Right. Sure, you can put collectible, but most people, aren't going to look through that. But that would be my take on it if I had to do it and try to figure out a way to make it make sense.
And my reason, I've seen some stuff on Amazon and I've taken a look, and it's due to poor title structure where it's buried, and the customer would have to know to type in certain things.
Interesting.
We call it back to eBay, it sells the same week.
Interesting. Yeah, So yeah, those are both good ideas.
Start developing the software, Joji. I mean, that's what we're telling you here. All right. I mean, get to work behind the scenes.
That one's free. We'll charge you for the next one.
All right.
I think my big appeal with this, right, is you can kind of do this from anywhere. And there's a lot of people that are on YouTube and maybe they kind of live in the middle of nowhere, or they don't have as many sources, or they don't have as much time. So the appeal for something kind of like a business you have is that you don't have to leave the house, and it doesn't matter how many thrift stores you have. It doesn't matter your competition in your area. You're just sitting online, dedicating a certain time to sit down and look at these things to flip. And I think that's the big attraction to it. I mean, like what kind of attracted you to it? Was it the time, or was it the money you could make?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think mostly it's just I just inherently didn't like going out places, going thrifty, scanning a whole bunch of stuff. I just would, I was always like, I'd rather just buy fewer books and sell them for way more money than do a whole bunch more volume, which could accomplish the same thing. I mean, you just need a lot more volume at lower ROI or lower profit. So I think it was just me kind of naturally not wanting to have to go places, because if you think about all the time, like it takes for you to actually drive somewhere. And then, if you make a map of all the Goodwills and all the thrift stores, like it, and you go, one day around, it might actually take you like an hour and a half or 2 hours just in travel time and waiting around. So it's like, that was all dead time to me, where it's like, okay, I think online arbitrage could definitely work, especially if you built up some capital, because, you can, with online arbitrage, you're already kind of just getting rid of so many people in this space, because most people won't do that. Like they don't think to do that, or they're just not comfortable doing it. But then when you raise your average buy cost as well, you also reduce the number of people who even do online arbitrage that are willing to get in that space. So I felt like there was just like a market that was clearly available with plenty of room for me to come in. And I was like, at this point in my life as well, I don't have time to go thrift stores. Like I wake up 6 a.m. I got to be at school teaching the kids by 8 a.m. Then I get home at 4:35 and I spend time with my boy and my wife. And then it's like, I have to source 10:30 p.m. to midnight. It's like, I can't go to a thrift store to do that. You know what I mean?
It's crazy that the kind of numbers you can put up if you're focused and understand what you're working with. And I'm kind of going to get into this, like, I'm the cheapest person around, right? So like, you might spend, $40 on a book, and I'm thinking to myself, well, that's 40 books at the thrift store, right? That's my cheap mind running. But you really don't think about, like you said, the time, and the thrift stores are no guarantee, right? You could go to 20 thrift stores in a day and get nothing. So like for somebody that's kind of has my like cheaper mindset, like how would you go about, like, say, for example, I was like, hey, I want to get into doing this, but I'm super cheap with this. Is it feasible to kind of start with little to nothing and kind of build this business into, what you made it into today?
Yeah, I think so. Just to give you some context, the average book cost right now for me is about 20, like just a little bit over $27. So like per book that I buy, that's what I would spend. Could you do it cheaply? I think probably the best way for you to start would be take the books that you've already sold on Amazon and then take a look at them. Take a look at their keeper graphs. I'm not sure how familiar you are with reading keeper graphs, but take a look at their keeper graph. Look at if in the past there's ever a point in time where you could say, if I could have gone back in time and bought this book at this price, it would have been a good deal, knowing what you know now in the future. And start with the books that you've already sold, because you already have a little bit of like security. Like, that you've already sold this book for 45 bucks. So the one book that we were just talking about I won't mention what it was, but the book the magazine that you had sold before it came on here, it's like, hey, look back at the keeper graph. Maybe that book was $8.99 in the past, and you set a Keepa tracker alert for that, and you get notified. And it's like, hey, I remember selling this for 45. So maybe just investing the money in things that have already moved for you in the past, that you have more, you have more confidence in selling. You could totally buy books that are much cheaper. But it's just that the average sell prices could be lower. So yeah, you could spend, between $5 to $10 per book, but you're probably looking more at like, probably in the low end, like 25 to like $35 or $40. So you could do it cheaply for sure. And then build over time.
So I want you to debunk a myth for me here, that an OA buyer is only a couple bad buys away from being out of business.
Yeah. If you have no capital, yeah, 100%.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, that kind of leads us into how I'm going to assume you use Be Cool as your repricer.
Correct. Yes.
So just for clarification here, that allows you to set minimum, maximum prices for your items.
Correct.
So you can have a minimum set to maybe it's your break even or a little bit under if it's been there for X amount of time. Right. And you're selling one-offs, right? You're not buying 100 copies of the same book. So it does kind of alleviate the risk tolerance, I guess. Just curious, like, just in your experience, for like what you see when you buy that book off eBay, say it says you're going to make $50 on it. Mm-hmm. How many times do you think you actually make close or that amount, or maybe even a little bit more? Just like 1 out of 3, 1 out of 4, because we all know when you scan a book in a thrift store and it says $10 profit, you ain't getting $10, right? That's just it's got to get there, it's got to get repriced, all that nonsense. I'm just curious what you see with like the higher price dollar textbooks, so the prices kind of stay more like where they should be versus the junkier stuff we're selling.
I think it's, like you said, it's very variable. It depends on the book for sure. Textbooks inherently can be very volatile, especially during textbook season. So what I would say is that when my thought process into buying a book is, I'm always trying to be super conservative. So by conservative, I mean like the absolute worst case scenario, should be that you break even on this book because you're buying it so undervalued. Obviously, there are some books that I have to take losses on. It's a very, very small percentage. And, some books would be like there are outside circumstances that you couldn't have predicted. Like, here's a book that, let's say, over the last 4 or 5 years, there's never been there have been new third-party sellers on it, and maybe they've always been at 150, and then just randomly somebody comes on with 100 new copies at like $15.99. You're like, dude, what the heck? Like, there's no way I could have accounted for something like that. But I would say overwhelming majority of the books do sell. I do pick up books that are longer tail though. So my average like sales rank is like 1.3 million. Like those are books that take a while to sell. It takes about 3.5 months on average to sell the books. And yeah, I mean, I definitely have some books that I bought from last year, like almost a year ago, that still haven't sold. But if you look at the keeper graphs, like they should still sell. So I guess my mindset of when I'm buying books is I'm trying to buy an asset. So I'm trying to take the money that I have and invest it in something that it inherently holds value. And I think one of the reasons why thrifting is so hard is because if you're finding books that are lower average selling price and they inherently hold less value, then the volatility means that they could basically become worthless like very easily. But if you think of a book that has been consistently selling for $50 or $60 for the last 5 or 10 years, and then you invest $25 in it, it's like you're putting your money into something that inherently holds value. Like, it's just a store of value. That's not money, but it's like an object. You know what I mean? So I guess that's my thought process behind that.
How much automation to manual work is your workflow like? Is it like fully automated Skynet style, or do you have to do some manual number punching from time to time?
Yeah, I definitely have to do manual stuff. Like, I have a spreadsheet of every book that I purchased, exactly when I purchased it, where I purchased it, how I purchased it. And then I also, how you have a transaction statement every 2 weeks that tells you exactly what you sold. So every day, at the end of every day, I'll go in and see what I sold. And I don't sell very many books. Like, on average, I sell 5 to 6 books a day, or I should say between 3 to 5 books a day is generally what I sell. My average sell price is $99. So it's like, I don't sell very many books. What I do is I just will take that book that I bought, I'll go over to my spreadsheet, and then I can just log it in individually. So there's probably a much better way to do that. So yeah, that's what I do manually. Even with repricing with Be Cool, I have to type in the min and the max price. I have to look at every keeper graph of every book that I buy. So it's definitely not super automated. I do have a couple of VAs now that are helping me with sourcing. So that's definitely helped. But I would say I spend about like 2 hours a day on this business, and that's that's what I do.
Is it 7 days or is it 5 days?
Yeah, like I said, no, 7 days. I spend like 2 hours every day on it. Yeah.
Okay, so we're looking at 14 hours a week. Just throw, you don't even have to be exact. Throw out like a monthly sales number that you recently had.
So January this year was 32K, and then last month was just over 13,000. So, and then basically all of last year. So last year I did 105K in sales, and that was about $30,000 profit. Yeah.
So, I mean, for people out there that don't have time, I mean, he just blew up your whole argument. He literally, has a newborn, works a full-time job, and still finds a way to kind of make this work. What's the big motivator for you? Is it just the financial freedom? Because for me, that's what it was for me, right? I grew up in debt. I was in credit card debt my whole life. And I said, well, I can have this side hustle to kind of get me out of the debt, get me out of the credit cards, and kind of, just if I want to buy something, then I can buy it. That was kind of my motivator. I didn't want to have to, worry about if a cat needed surgery or something, I ain't got the money to put it up. So that was kind of like my motivator. What was yours? Like?
Yeah, I think my motivator is that it is ultimately like financial independence. So my wife and I are on a journey of financial independence, retire early, and increasing your income is one way to be able to become financially independent earlier in life. I would say there are other aspects of it. Like, I genuinely just love flipping stuff. It's like a game to me. Like, it's just super fun. I obviously have other interests and hobbies, but it's like, some people are like, well, don't you ever want to take a break? And in some ways I'm like, this is my break. Like, this is fun to me. Like, this is stress relieving. Like, this is something that I generally want to do. So maybe I'm fortunate that I was able to align a side hustle with a hobby, and like in those things, they commingle well. And then I guess the other thing is, like, I do want to start a YouTube channel because I, somewhat selfishly would love to put my name out there and would love to meet people like yourselves. Like, there's no way we could have really met if we both were on YouTube. Like, we're in the US, but in reality, we live in different parts of the world. Like, we would never see each other. So I guess it's just, combination of things, but yeah, I think I want to become financially independent. It's a hobby. I really like to do it. And then also selfishly, like I want to kind of get my name out there. I would like to be known. I'd like to meet new people, and I like to also teach people because I think that's a skill of mine.
So is there a scenario where you would leave your teaching gig to go do this full time?
Yeah, I think once we become financially independent, I think that is what the goal is. So our goal is to be financially independent by age 35. Right now we're age 28. So by 35 means
old,
that
Mike, it's making me feel old.
So the goal is that by age 35, we'd get to a point where we would no longer need to work any longer based upon our current living expenses because we live very frugally. And at that point, it would be probably just get out of teaching, because I love teaching high school. It has its own challenges though. And, it's as much as I love teaching high school, it is also, emotionally, it's also taxing. Like it's not an easy job. So yeah, I think I'd like to transition. I think YouTube can help me with that as well, like helping to get my name out there, help other people, hopefully also grow the business in that way. Because going back to your point, it's like last year, I sold $100,000 in books, made $30,000 of profit, but I had to bust my ass. Like I had to do that 2 hours every day. I had to do that 10:30 p.m. to midnight. I had to wake up at 6 a.m. So it was not like it's easy, like it's sacrifices. So I know that education, coaching people, that is also a way that you can generate more revenue. So maybe kind of taking the pedal off a little bit in terms of going so hard on like getting Amazon ramped and maybe helping people more could be a way to segue.
That's
as well.
Still a part of teaching. So you wouldn't be giving it up altogether.
Yeah, exactly. You're right, Johnny. Exactly.
Yeah, I know. I seen, because I'm in your Discord and everything. You just started your offering one-on-one like coaching sessions.
Yeah. 100%.
I mean, well, as a teacher teaching you, right? It's one of those things, and that kind of gets me to like, say if somebody comes along like myself, I suck with computers, I suck with software. Do you think it's possible for somebody like myself to get into a business like yours and start doing eBay to Amazon flips with no really technology experience? Just kind of run that down, right? Because I know there's a bunch of different programs that you need, and just kind of like the cost of those programs as well for somebody out there that's maybe just thinking about giving it a shot. So just give me a rundown of if you had to teach somebody from nothing today and lay out the expenses of me starting.
Yeah. If you're just starting brand new, the only software you need is Keepa. That's it. Because Keepa is how you're going to analyze every single book that you come across, really any product that you come across. It tells you everything that you need to know about it. And then also Keepa has these ways for you to source inventory. Like, not sure if you guys have used the Keepa product finder, you use the Keepa deals page, if you use Keepa alerts, but those three things independently, like if those were softwares that were not part of Keepa, I would easily pay $100 a month for each of those individually. So those are really powerful sourcing tools. If anyone out there is familiar with like eFlip and Zen Arbitrage and Master Book Flippers, like all those softwares, in my opinion, are inferior to Keepa's ways to source books that I just mentioned. So all you really need to get started is a Keepa subscription, which is about $20 a month. Now, going to what is required in terms of like, you need to be able to analyze data. So being able, like, if you're not really able to look at a graph, you're not really able to follow, like look at, make sort of relationships between like how like supply and demand, which is things that it's not like it's super difficult, but at the same time, it's like you have to have some analytical ability. So I would say if you're someone who you look at numbers and you look at graphs and you're like, oh, it just makes me crazy, then I would say probably maybe start with thrifting, start maybe a different model, because I would lie if I said it wasn't analytical heavy. Like pretty much every book that I buy, you have to read a Keepa graph because you have to know if it's a good buy or not. So, it may not be a good
when
fit.
you started it, like, did you like for maybe like the first month or 2 or 3, did you like go for like the lower value stuff to see if you knew what you were doing, right? I'm going to assume you didn't just jump in and start buying $50 textbooks from the beginning.
Yeah, I would say from the beginning, because I already had that experience of being on campus and being, I was willing to spend a little bit more for books. Like for books that I knew that were selling for, 100 plus, I was willing to put up 30, 40, maybe even $50 for them. I think I was able to come into like eFlip and like spend a little bit more money. I would lie though if I didn't say that it makes you anxious sometimes. It's like, man, do I really want to put $50 for one book? Because there's a lot of things that can inherently go wrong. And in the beginning, like even when I was flipping books on college campuses, when you don't know what you don't know, it's like, man, am I really going to spend $25 for this book? It looks great. It looks like it sells for 100, but you don't actually know it until you do it. And so I think it was kind of just building up the confidence with starting slow. And once you start slow and you're like, okay, you start to notice patterns, like these books are actually selling, they are moving, I am making money. Then I was able to go a little bit, a little bit deeper. And like now I get to the point where I feel comfortable with my keep abilities. Like if I look at a book and it looks like it holds value, like I've definitely bought books for over $200 in eBay and flipped them for 400 or 500. So I'm not, at this point, I'm willing to do that, but it took a long time to get to that point.
Now, what would be your biggest advice to someone just starting OA, or the biggest mistake you've made to avoid?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest mistake for OA booksellers is the way, like the business model, the way that you think you're going to make money. So like eFlip, Zen Arbitrage, Master Book Flippers, the goal for those softwares is to find the lowest merchant offer and then flip lowest FBA, which would be in the buy box. In other words, exploit the prime bump. So right. I would say most people go wrong in buying books for $8 or $9 on Amazon as the lowest merchant offer, thinking they're going to sell them for 45 or 50 bucks in the buy box. In other words, the way that they make money is exploiting the buy box. And what you learn is that, okay, you have to understand when the buy box is actually reasonable. Yes, people are 100% willing to pay more money to get it in 2 days, but you got to think logically, like, is someone really going to pay 40 or 50 more dollars to get that in 2 days? Probably some small percentage of people, but the overwhelming majority of people are not. So it's like, what I had to learn quickly was that, okay, all these initial buys in the beginning, when I was like trying to buy these books at the lowest merchant offer, flip them for the buy box, like I was like, this isn't working. These books are not selling. The buy box eventually comes back down. It tanks. I end up barely making money, or I basically break even. So then I had to learn, well, how do you fundamentally buy undervalued books? Because the way that, at least my thought process on it is now, is that I'm trying to find books that are cheaper than they should be, and therefore the way you make money is just by buying them and then reselling them for what they should be sold for. Like that's how you make the margin. So yeah.
Are you on any other platforms for selling other than Amazon?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit on eBay. I'll usually sell books on eBay if I have some restricted books that I can't sell to a buyback company, or I can't sell the restricted inventory, I'll sell them on eBay, but very, very small percentage. Yeah.
I was going to say that since your main focus is textbooks, what is your gating situation look like, right? Because kind of when we created our Amazon accounts, years and years ago, there's really none of this nonsense of every publisher is gated. But now every day somebody needs to get ungated in McGraw-Hill, Pearson. Yeah. Do you have like any big gates that are still up for you, or like are you actively still trying to ungate some publishers? Like just what's it kind of look like for you?
I've ungated everything that's ungateable at this point. I still cannot sell the popular textbook categories, which are the Cengage, McGraw-Hill, Pearson, like the specific books. And those are, a lot of people complain about that, but it's actually the silver lining to that is that all those books are highly likely to be counterfeit. So story time, back in early 2021, I was selling textbooks. I sold 3 counterfeit textbooks. I got test buyed out by a company. They sent me basically letters that said, hey, you're selling counterfeit textbooks. They gave me no proof that the books I sold were actually counterfeit. And even at that time, I wasn't even aware that counterfeit textbooks were a thing. And as a result of that, basically my account got suspended on Amazon. I had to hire an attorney. I had to pay like $1,500 to write plan of actions, which actually ended up to not be very good plan of actions. And I could have probably just done a better job myself, but I basically had to wait for those counterfeit claims to fall off my account after 180 days. Eventually my account went back to green and I'm no longer suspended anymore. But the point is that those specific categories for textbooks that everyone's gated in is actually a good thing, because those are books that are highly likely to be counterfeited. And if you're not gated in those right now and you are selling textbooks, you should probably expect to get test buyed at some point by those companies. And from my understanding, they don't have to provide any evidence whatsoever that the books that you actually sold to them are counterfeit. You have to prove to them that what you bought is not counterfeit. And you cannot do that if you bought it from a student, or you thrifted it, or you got it from a bulk buy. The only way you can do that is with an actual invoice from a distributor, which no one has. So, yeah, I basically can sell everything else, just I can't sell those, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but yeah.
Well, dark cloud scenario, if the suspension would ever become a permanent thing for lack of unforeseeables, what would you do? Would you still book flip?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, probably I would. I'd probably get my wife to form an account in a different address and a different, different bank account that's not tied to me. Probably use a VPN so the IP address is different. So that's probably what I would try to do. You would still
go back just to sneakily win.
Oh yeah.
I like
100%. It. I'm not in the wrong here. These guys, I mean, yeah, I would try to get an account somewhere. If I couldn't get an account with someone I knew, then I'd try one of my friends and probably try to work out like a commission deal or something. Like, hey, can I can I sell books under your name on your account, and I'll give you 10% of whatever I make.
Yeah, I like it. I'll even do the mail run for you.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. So hopefully Jeff Bezos isn't watching this, or
I think us older accounts are in the free and clear now. They only go after the newbies, it seems like, overall.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll see. I don't know. I mean, hopefully
you just jinxed it.
I was gonna ask you, like, if you buy books off eBay, like if you're inspecting them, but you use a prep center, don't you?
Correct. I use a prep center. So what I do is I use Books Run is a website. It's a buyback company. They also sell books on their website. They have a counterfeit probability check. It's not perfect, but what I'll do, and I have my VAs do, is just run that ISBN through that counterfeit probability check. And if it comes back likely or unlikely, I just don't even mess with it. If it comes back unlikely, which most books do come back unlikely, then I'll just send it to a prep center. And I have I think a really good prep center, the Central, Central Virginia Prep. That's my prep center. They do a really good job of inspecting books in comparison to, I think, other prep centers. Not saying that they're opening every book and they're like check marking every, they're just doing a better job comparatively to other people. And, I've been using a prep center for the last year and a half, and so far I haven't had any issues with more counterfeits. But one of the big reasons is that I cannot sell the books that are very likely to be counterfeited. So probably that's one of the reasons why as well.
So
outside of or go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say, so checks and balance wise, you actually run every one of your books you buy through this software just to err on the side of caution, even though, like you said, most 99% of the time it's not counterfeit. You just want to cover all your bases on your end. And is that like a paid software or what? So
it's actually free. And I would step back and say it's not 99%. Like, actually, there are a ton of counterfeit books out there. It's actually more than you would think. So there are books every day that I'll run through that say likely or very likely that I just won't buy. So I come across them. We come across them every day, but it is free. It's free. It's not a software. It's just a website. You can just type in Books Run, counterfeit probability check. And like I said, it's not perfect. Just because something says likely or unlikely, just because something says likely or very likely doesn't mean it's counterfeit. It just means there's a good chance that it could be. And just because it says unlikely doesn't mean that it's not counterfeit. So it's just kind of like you said, it's a preventative thing. I catch books that probably could have been counterfeit, and that's the goal, is to prevent those from getting to the warehouse.
Well, textbooks gets all the glory, right? Are there other books besides textbooks you like to go after?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So, with eBay, basically with FlipMine, I should say, that software, anytime a new book is listed on eBay, or really anything in any product, or any category, because FlipMine isn't just for books specifically, it's for any product category out there. But whenever anything new is listed on eBay, what FlipMine tries to do is take that UPC code and match it to something on Amazon. And the goal is, if there's a price differential between the two, then potentially you could buy it on eBay and flip it on Amazon. So yeah, there are tons of books that have value that are not textbooks. And an easy way to see how many books out there that are not textbooks would be just to use the product finder tool. You can basically input parameters and say, hey, find me books that have a value over the last 180 days above $75. And then you can, down below, you can say, I don't want this to be McGraw-Hill. I don't want it to be Cengage. I don't want it to be this. So then you can basically filter out, like, there's tens of thousands of books that have a ton of value. And those are books that I would also flip as well.
Nice.
You only like books? Are you into like flipping other things, or like, does it even interest you? Or are you like just staying kind of being the book flipper guy with this and not really kind of trying to get into other categories?
Yeah, I think I used to be into video games a lot. Like I said, I was doing a lot of like OfferUp and Facebook Marketplace, video game flipping. And I kind of just realized that the amount of time it takes in comparison to me buying books is not worth it. Like, in many ways, flipping video games is so much fun. Like, the hunt is so, I'm not sure if any of you guys do it, but the hunt of going out there finding video games, like garage sales and even thrift stores, like it's really awesome. But at the end of the day, like, when you sit down and you run the numbers, like, selling books is way up here compared to flipping video games. So that was one of the reasons. Another reason is from what I've read, like, there's this book I read called The Pumpkin Plan that I'm not sure if you heard about it. It's by an author named Mike Michalowicz. He also wrote Profit First. But the idea is, like, if you think about those pumpkin farmers that win these big competitions for like the biggest pumpkin, the only thing that they think about is growing the biggest pumpkin. They think about, like, well, what's the exact soil I need? What's the exact seed that I need? What's the exact sunlight? What's the exact amount of water? So they really hone in on one thing to try to grow one big pumpkin rather than to try to grow some, I guess, larger, have more quantity of larger ones. So I think the idea is that focus can really help you grow something big rather than being distracted. And now actually that I'm becoming more automated with the business, that I do have a couple of VAs that are helping me. Once I get books completely automated and I feel like my VAs are buying at the same capacity that I am, I do kind of want to transition to just normal traditional OA, because I think that could be very lucrative as well.
Cool.
I would love to be a video game flipper like yourself, but
Yeah.
there ain't enough product out there. I would say, like, do you feel like one reason you kind of stick with books is a lot of people kind of undervalue their books versus, say, video games? If you're on eBay, like people are more likely to put an astronomical price on a video game than a book. Just some crazy person who decides to list something.
Yeah, 100%. People in general, I'm sure both of you agree, like they see books, and it's a really weird dichotomy of books, because people don't see them as having value, yet they don't want to throw them away. So it's weird that you would see something that's like, oh, this has no value, but also I'm not going to throw it away. Most people, when they think it has no value, they just toss it. But yeah, 100%. If you're somebody who is flipping books, I would say look at Facebook Marketplace, offer up in your local area. If you're living in some place that's populated, I'm sure throughout the week, there's got to be at least 3 or 4 pretty good deals. Like I'm talking spend 20, flip it for 100 plus. Like there's got to be a couple of those, because I've been like, even now on my YouTube series, I'm doing a 0 to 1,000 series. And I'm trying to show people, like, if I actually had $0, what I would do. And I'm still finding like 4 or 5 deals a week where I can literally go drive out and meet someone in my local area. Now, granted, I live in a kind of more populated area, so that helps, but definitely don't sleep on those. Those are great opportunities. And yeah, a lot of people they just don't see books as having a lot of value, I think.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I see that also in CDs and DVDs.
Yeah.
Well, more so in CDs, less so in DVDs. Because I think the video games have that general public stereotype. They're valuable. But everything else in media, not so much.
Yeah, 100%.
I think you started, didn't you, like, with that series on YouTube? You just got books from your neighbor, right?
Yeah, yeah.
A lady was looking to get rid of her books, and you're just like, I'll take them.
Yeah, I literally made I spent like 5 minutes making a little thing on Canva, just like, I'll pick up your books. I put it in my apartment complex's laundry room. There's like 100 units here, and I was like, that's all I'm gonna do. I could put it on Craigslist, on Nextdoor. I could put it on Facebook Marketplace. I could do a whole bunch of stuff, but I literally left it there for about a month, and someone finally messaged me. And so then, I went down, grabbed her books, sold them to a buyback company, because most of the books actually weren't worth anything, but I was able to get like $12, and then that's where I snowballed it from there. But yeah.
$12 and a dream. That'll be a movie. It'll be like one of the ESPN 30 for 30s. $12 and Joji's dream. And it's crazy to think about, though, right? You know, the volume you're doing, the amount of sales you're doing. And I think you're trending in the right direction. But on the topic of trends, you were doing eBay to Amazon and these kind of flips before it kind of took off here in the last year, right? So how do you feel about it kind of being like, because to me right now, I would say it's the hottest reselling trend. eBay to Amazon is the hot thing right now. Yeah. Like, how has that affected your business? Because you were there before and you're going to be there afterwards. I'm just curious what your mindset is on everybody trying to get in on it.
Yeah, I think it's a lot harder to find books on eBay now using FlipMine, because there are a lot more people looking for books specifically. It's a low-hanging fruit. It's really not that hard to do it in the grand scheme of online arbitrage. So yeah, it's been harder to get books on eBay. With that said, I'm still finding books on eBay. And then also, I think what's something that most people are not doing is Amazon to Amazon flips. So I think in that space, it's still very, very wide open. And most of my books I buy are from Amazon directly. And that's still something that is every day. Like, I mean, even during our podcast right now, I'm getting alerts right now on Keepa for books that are potential leads. And it's like every day I buy 2 or 3 books just from alerts that I set in the past. And those are books that have become undervalued that you could, buy on Amazon, flip back on Amazon.
Well, speaking of fads, have you ever done any sourcing from good old Whatnot?
Oh, no, I have not. I mean, I've heard of Whatnot, but I've never done any sourcing there. But should I be doing that?
I've looked at it, at least in the book market in my vintage game. Mm-hmm. You definitely could. Now, I haven't done any specific investigation on textbooks over there.
Okay.
Because that's the thing. They'll hold up a book and it's not like you get an alert about it or anything. So you have to attend and know what they have. That's I think that would be the hard part to unravel.
Yeah, I could see how Whatnot would be a super lucrative thing for a bookseller that gets a lot of textbooks. Like if somebody has a honey hole from a college or somebody who actually has like hundreds and hundreds of textbooks and they get a consistent flow of them, I could see how as a seller Whatnot would be great, because if you attract a whole bunch of Amazon book flippers, I'm sure you could just move stuff for obviously cheaper than what you could sell for on Amazon, but you could just move stuff so quick. But I haven't looked into that. I'd be curious to know how fruitful it would be for the time that would be invested for it, though.
Right, I am too. Especially if you're sending into Amazon. It's like for me, I know I could do that easily for eBay, but on Amazon, that's a question mark.
Yeah, that is a question mark. Interesting.
I'm curious here, like, so you want to transfer kind of into like your standard OA kind of deal. Do you have like a time frame for that? Because right now, I mean, you're the hottest thing on the block here, eBay to Amazon. Like, these are the glory days, right? Nobody cares about us thrifters, right? Our thrifters are a thing of the past. Everybody wants to do what you're doing currently. So like, do you have like maybe like, I know you're talking about financial independence, actually switching over to OA. Is that when you're going to switch, when you clear everything and you're ready to go, or are you kind of just going to dabble in it and kind of work your way into it?
Yeah, I'm actually starting to dabble in a little bit. I got my first box over there of some OA products that I bought. So I'm just starting to dabble in it now. And the reason why, like I said, is I feel like my book business is at the point where it's almost completely automated. Like I've got a prep center and I've got VAs purchasing books for me. And I have them also doing some work behind the scenes to like kind of take a little bit of time off me. I'm currently still also buying books though, which is the thing. Like that's so, but at some point I feel like, okay, maybe I could start transitioning out of buying books and could go towards more traditional OA. And why do I want to do that? I just think that there's a lot of opportunity in the OA, traditional OA space that I never got into for like mainly just fear. Like I knew it existed, but I was like, I wasn't really sure how to get ungated and things. Wasn't really sure about IP complaints. So there's all these unknowns. There's these things that I didn't know what I didn't know. And so that kind of prevented me from going into it. And I was also really good at books. So I said, you know what, let's just focus on books. But having gotten on YouTube and gotten to meet a lot of people who are in the OA game specifically, I realized that, wow, these things are a lot easier than I thought they would be. So I feel like I'm missing some opportunity, especially if I can sort of delegate so much of the book buying business to my virtual assistants to carry over.
So for your book buying, I know you're targeting probably individual books, but is there are cases where you target book lots perhaps to get that one or two gem and then you're stuck with 48 other things?
Yeah, not mostly just one-offs. Yeah, mainly Amazon, eBay. They're generally just people listing individual books. There are some books that I'll buy multiple copies of. That there are some books that are replens, like I've sold 4 or 5 times in the last year that I'll buy once they get to a certain price.
Buy kind of things, yeah.
Yeah, but generally I don't do many bulk buys, or I don't really do any bulk buys. Yeah, one-offs.
All right, you're either going to blow up my whole business model here or not. How do you condition your books? Or do you care about condition? Do you just roll? Do you do what I say, everything good condition, or like, because your stuff's going to a prep center, so your answer is going to be a little bit different because you don't physically see the book. And I'm going to assume a lot of the books you're buying are probably stock photos. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's another thing you kind of can answer here, if most of it's stock photos, but like just your conditioning of your books when you're selling.
Yeah. That's funny. I remember I don't know if it was a video that you had or as a comment that you said basically you list everything good. And that originally I was like, that's an interesting perspective. And I actually really appreciate that perspective once I heard of, like, once I actually thought took some time to process it. But what we do now is, like, whenever we buy a book, we just take whatever the condition is and we put that on the spreadsheet that the prep center looks at. And when they receive the item, they actually do the conditioning. So they open up and they go, okay, this is in good condition, and they match it. So if mine says very good or good, they'll be like, okay, we'll just list this as good because we think it's in good condition. So the real reason why I would just take whatever the condition was and put it on that spreadsheet is in the case that we bought a book that was supposed to be very good and it's like acceptable. And so there's like something that we could maybe return to the seller if there's like if they basically misrepresented what they had. But generally now I'm kind of taking more of your perspective. It's like, it's either good or acceptable. So I use this good or acceptable. That's like what I do.
And I'm also not convinced the customers ever read that condition note. I'm really not.
Yeah. I mean, I can't remember when I was buying textbooks on Amazon when I was in college if I read them. I think I just
did you ever read?
I don't think so.
I ever read a condition note on a product I bought from Amazon? No.
Yeah.
I'm another thing here. Like all right, so I don't have a prep center. I never used one. I kind of seen videos, people talking about prep centers, and it usually seems like it's kind of always negative. People always like, oh, this prep center sucks, yada yada yada. But it seems like the one you have is like, I don't know, they just seem like if I had a prep center, that's what I would do for my customers. It's almost as if
Yeah.
like they kind of go the extra mile for you. I don't know why or what, but I mean the fact they're inspecting your books for you is I mean that's crazy. And the fact, so say you buy a book and it's just water damage, they're willing
Yeah.
to actually send it back to the eBay customer for you.
Right. I mean, I'm going to be the one who has to contact the seller and has to get them to give me a free return shipping label. But what they'll do on the spreadsheet is they'll basically highlight the entire cell red, and that basically says, hey, this is like hey, you got to do something with this because this was supposed to be very good. It came in acceptable. It's water damage. The spine's broken. They're basically saying it's unsellable. So we're not going to send it in because we don't feel good to send this in. Like we don't think a customer's gonna be happy with this. And so then I have to go back and figure out, okay, where did I buy it from? That's why tracking the books is very helpful to know where you bought it from, who you bought it from. And then you would contact the seller and just say, hey, I was supposed to receive this in good condition. It's an unsellable condition for this reason. Please send me a free return shipping label. And then all I would need to do is email that return shipping label to them, and they'll go ahead and put that on the package, and they'll go ahead and send it off. And they charge like $1.50 or something. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's better than, you sending in a book that you get negative feedback on, or, you know what I mean? But
So we've had this come up in Mike's group here.
Mhm.
Could a person do what you do that's homebound, let's say doesn't have a vehicle or is handicapped for whatever reason and can't leave the home? Can they do what you do from their home, never leaving their home?
if they had a prep center, yeah, it would still be a little bit difficult because you have returns. Like there's at some level, you're going to have to touch some amount of products. But like for me, like 95% of what I buy, I don't ever touch. It just goes right to my prep center. It goes to Amazon, then it goes to customer, and most books don't get returned. But there are going to be some books that you sell to customer, gets returned. Amazon says unsellable. Then you have to obviously get sent back to your house. And then you'd have to like go leave your house, go down to your mailbox and get it. So I would say pretty much you can make it so that you don't ever have to leave the house. But there's got to be some point at which you're going to have to touch some books.
Yeah. There you have it for those listening that have asked.
Yeah.
I mean, it just goes to show, like, kind of, and that's another benefit of why a lot of the OA people are heavily into OA, because you can do it from anywhere in the world, right?
Yeah,
Joji could be, where he's at today, and tomorrow he could be on the moon, and then Mars, and then the Bahamas, and then anywhere he can do this from, and that's a huge appeal, right? A lot of us want to get our time back. A lot of people enjoy traveling, and this type of business, right? Listen, I got to be in my storage unit every day. Joji don't got to be at the storage unit every day. I got to go pick up the books, when someone calls me. You're not really worried about that. And I think another thing that kind of is appealing is you're not, your prep center, how many books you say you send them in a week?
Yeah, we buy about, usually like the average is about 5 books a day. So it could be 10 one day, it could be 3 one day. So, I mean, that's just based off of last year's numbers. It was about 5 books a day. So, I mean, basically they're getting about, 35 books on average a week. It's actually starting to increase a little bit more now because in the last few months, I actually picked up a couple of VAs. I'm still sourcing. So they're probably getting more around like 10 books now, but the average last year is about 5 books a day. That's how many books I bought last year every day.
So for people
that's what I was going to ask you if you had a monetary budget, a daily one or not, but it sounds like it's just a capacity personnel kind of thing.
Yeah, it's for me is like my average profit per book's $49. So it's like how many books would I need to buy to make a certain amount of profit? So like for me, it was like I need to buy 5 books a day to kind of get to where I want to be. Yeah. So for me, it wasn't ever like a spend goal. The average book cost is $27. So it's like if I buy 5 books, I'm spending over $100 a day. And if you spend over $100 a day, that's over $3,000 a month. So like it obviously, that's just the average. Some books, sometimes you buy more, but between $3,000 to $5,000 a month would be like what you're spending or what I'm spending. Yeah.
I mean, you kind of build up to it, right? It's not like the first day you're doing it, you're going to find, 30 books you're going to buy. And I think it's, it intrigues me, the fact that you don't have to send large quantities, right? If I'm thinking
Yeah.
prep center, I'm thinking I got to send, X amount of units per week, per month or something like that. So
Yeah.
that's kind of good to see that you don't have to, send, so many units for them to actually take care of you as a customer, for somebody out there that maybe doesn't want to prep. I'm just curious, why do you utilize a prep center?
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, it's like you got to think about what works for you in your time. For me, it's like I have about 2 hours a day that I can do stuff. So do I need to spend that 2 hour? I need to do in that 2 hours what makes me the most money, and what makes me the most money is buying. It's actually not as difficult to be able to unpackage, a book, condition it, list it. Like that's not something that's making the money. It's the actual buying the book. So for me, it was that if I didn't have a prep center, I don't know how I'd do it. Because literally, as soon as I put, my boy to bed, I'd have to go down to the mailbox. I'd have to get 5-7 books. I'd have to haul them up, doing this at 10:30 at night. Unpack. So it'd be a lot less sourcing, I guess is what I should say. So for me, I was like, okay, how do I automate that part of not having to send the books in Amazon? And what I will say is it took me forever to get a prep center because I was fearful. I was anxious because I didn't know what I didn't know. You hear about all these people saying, yeah, if you have a prep center, like those must be those guys doing hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like it must be really hard. But I will tell you, every single step that I've taken in my Amazon business has always been like every single big step has been me coming to the conclusion like, wow, that really wasn't that difficult. Like I should have done that so much sooner, but it was like the fear of the unknown that kind of stopped me, prevented me. So what I'll say about the prep centers, if you're someone on the fence, if it comes down to it where it's like you're running out of time, you should absolutely get a prep center, because if you have enough capital left over to go buy more products, that's probably going to be a job that makes you more money in comparison to actually doing your prep. And in reality, you could get a prep center set up within one day, like literally within 3 hours. You could email a prep center. You could go ahead and say, this is my model. This is how many things I plan to send you. You would literally give them access to your account so that they can list things for you. And literally within a day, you can get a prep center set up and send them stuff starting the next day. So it actually is way easier than you think. Same thing with VAs. I thought getting a VA would be so crazy, so hard. You had to be this next level person, but it boiled down to it again being, I don't have enough time. I need to buy back more time. And I realized again, like hiring a VA is not really that hard. Like it's just taking the first step. You learn along the way. Now is everything. Like starting Amazon seller account, that's hard for a lot of people, but you realize after you do it, like it's not really that hard. Same thing as selling on eBay. It's like that first product that you list, you think it's really hard, but at the end of the day, once you do it, you realize, okay, it really wasn't too bad.
So I'm guessing with your business model, since restock limits were a big talk this year because of things, you're not really affected by restock limits. I'm not thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually affected by restock limits
Really?
about 2 weeks ago. I actually hit 1,000. So my base was actually 1,000, and the reason why is because my average selling price is $99. So if I have 1,000 books in there, 1,000 times 100 is $100,000. So you have like $100,000 of inventory in there. So for me, it wasn't really a problem because I was doing the model fewer books that are worth more money. And they also move very slowly. 3.5 months on average takes a long time for a book to move. So just recently, 2 weeks ago, that was the first time that I couldn't send any more inventory in, and then they changed the
What was that
capacity.
like for you? Because like
It was great.
What do I do?
Yeah, I mean, I actually was starting to go back, and I mean, I knew that this capacity limit thing was coming up, so I was like, you know what, I'll probably just wait for 2 weeks, and because I knew that once again I was gonna have the minimum 100 cubic feet, that was gonna be well over 1,000 units for books. So I was like, okay, I'm still good. So it's kind of something I'm kicking down the road. Eventually, if I get to that point where I have probably it's going to be close to 2,000 books is my estimate based upon the numbers. Like when I would get to that 100 cubic feet capacity, then maybe I'll think about, I'll have to think about another strategy of how to get things to move faster. I mean, I know that you can bid for space, so I'd probably look into that.
Cool.
You if we're at the club and they're like, hey, anybody that's been really affected by restock limits, you're not allowed in that line just because you had to suffer for 1 week.
2 weeks.
1 whole week.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, the
my
worst 2
God.
weeks of my life, man.
I'm like sitting there for 6 months. I'm still outside in the line shivering, waiting to send my stuff in,
Gosh.
It's
I got very fortunate. I'll say that. Very fortunate.
I mean,
Yes.
we're all kind of following in your suit, right? And we all want to have a higher ASP. I'm not sure, like, has your mind changed at all with sell-through? Like, are you thinking about maybe going for a little bit faster selling items now that you kind of got smacked with restock limits for the first time? Is it even like come across your mind? Like, maybe I only start doing stuff that's 2.5 months or 3 months versus, 3.5 months.
Yeah, I definitely have changed some things. Like originally when I would be buying a book where I'd buy maybe like 3 or 4 copies of, and it's inherently a book that doesn't really move very frequently, I would just send all 3 books to the prep center and they'd send it to Amazon. Now it's like, I'll send 1 book to the prep center and I'll send the other 2 to my house and I'll let it sit on a shelf. And as soon as this book sells, and I'll just replenish it when I have to, because I eventually have to make shipments myself as well. Because, I'll get books here again that get returned because they got returned by the customer. So there are, every usually like once a month, I have to send a shipment of like 30 or 40 books into Amazon's warehouse. So that was one way that I transitioned. Yeah. Also I was thinking I've actually started to buy books that, or I guess this should say I started to stop buying books that wouldn't move as, that would move more slowly, I should say. So I've tried to transition to buying books that would move a little bit more quickly. And then going back to online arbitrage, traditional way, inherently you're buying products that have a much lower ROI, but turn much quicker. And the idea is that having a little bit of OA in there will probably help with sell through a little bit. And that will therefore hopefully increase capacity limits a little bit.
So I had a curious question because we talk about college textbooks a lot. You never hear a lot about high school textbooks.
Yeah.
So what's the game like there, my man?
Yeah, I think most high school textbooks are generally not worth anything. There are some, like most of the AP textbook editions, those books generally tend to be worth something, but just it's weird. Like in my experience selling books, like there's just not very many high school books that actually hold a bunch of value.
Interesting.
Yeah, but there are definitely some out there, and their textbook season is usually June, July rather than August or
They
September.
even have a different season. Okay.
Yeah, they have a different season because they buy right before the beginning of the textbook or right before the beginning of the year, which, yeah, I don't know why. It's just a little bit, it's a little bit sooner. That's weird.
It is weird. It's fascinating. Mike, do high school textbooks.
You walk in first day of class and there's new textbooks for you in the class. Are you scanning that barcode?
100%.
Yeah, there we go. I knew it.
I mean, I just to know, not that I'm going to sell them, but I want to know, like, if at
the end of class you have a little donation bin, drop off your textbooks here.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny. My first year of teaching, they were throwing a whole bunch of textbooks into the dumpster, and so after school, I went back and like was scanning some of them from the dumpster. I'm like, I felt so ethically, I felt like weird about it because I was like, I don't know if I should be selling these. Like these are from the school, but I'm like,
you absolutely should.
But like in my defense, I was thinking, what's the worst case scenario that's gonna happen? They're gonna write a newspaper article that says teachers selling books from the dumpster to make ends meet. I'm like, that's not that bad of a headline. Like that'd be
no, it's gonna be teacher was dumpster diving to sell textbooks. That's a much better headline.
No, I got it right here. This would be it, right? He's no longer Joji Davenport. He's Dumpster Davenport, right? And all the kids and teachers and faculty point and laugh at Dumpster Davenport every time he shows up.
But when he drives up as a Mercedes, the name calling is not so bad.
That is true. All of a sudden, they're like, whoa, he was on to something.
It's true. I'm Dumpster Davenport. It's cool.
Have you like personally tried to get other people that you know in real life into the business, right? Because you kind of you have proof of concept and everything. And I can admit I've tried to get, some of my in real life friends, and it's just not for them. Have you tried ever going that route and be like, hey, like what this is something you could do to make money?
Yeah, I mean, I got my dad into it. My dad's been selling since like 2017, so I taught him how to do it. He doesn't do books; he does all like DVD, and he does like ties on eBay. So he does ties on eBay, and he does DVDs. So he goes to his local thrift stores in the area, and he'll literally just pick up a whole bunch of sealed DVDs and flip them that way. And he got ungated early on in the game when it wasn't so easy, when there wasn't this guy, Mike, the used book guy, just telling everyone how to get ungated for free. So that darn guy, but anyways,
I ruined it.
You did ruin it.
But I think my dad, like back in the day, I think he paid like $250 to get ungated in DVD. Because back then, like it's become so much easier to get ungated and stuff because the information out there has there's people like Mike out there willing to give that information out for free. And so I got my dad into it. I got my mom into it a little bit as well. Like after the pandemic, she got furloughed, and so I taught her how to do some textbook flipping as well. She got a new job. It wasn't necessarily for her. Yeah, I've tried to teach some of my friends. Like I still remember 2017, 2018, I could go into the campus bookstore and they had a clearance section And some of the books on that clearance section were like great books. Like I probably made at least a few $1,000s from the textbook store, where they were just taking $100 books and putting them on clearance for $20 because they were no longer being used, but they still had value with them. So I remember taking one of my friends into the bookstore and scanning the books with the Amazon seller app. And at that time, Amazon would offer back gift cards they would actually do buybacks themselves. So I said, hey man, take this book, buy it for 20, flip it back to Amazon. They'll give you a $75 gift card. And I think he found that super interesting, but then he never did anything. So yeah, going back to what you said, Mike, I think just most people are not really interested. They don't have that mindset, which is not bad. It's just, I think we're a unique kind of breed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's one of those things where you got to kind of get into it, and yeah, sure, somebody can flip something once, but that's really not going to get them hooked on convincing somebody, right? You tell your family and friends like, yeah, I make a full-time income selling books, and they're like, you're nuts, like that doesn't even make sense. Like
get a real job.
Yeah, get a real job. Like it's crazy to think about. So like kind of here to round this out for somebody that was on the fence and they kind of wanted to start doing what you were doing, eBay to Amazon flips, like what would kind of be like your best advice for somebody that wanted to start today and just get into the business head on and fully commit to it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll back up in saying that most of my business is not actually eBay to Amazon. Most of it's Amazon to Amazon. I'd say about 25% of the books I sell is eBay to Amazon. Then the other 50% is like 60% is more Amazon to Amazon. But if you're somebody who's just getting started, I would, specifically with Amazon and selling books, I would actually not recommend doing online arbitrage. I'd recommend going to thrift stores, library sales, OfferUp, Facebook Marketplace, your local area, and learning cheaply, because you're going to make mistakes and it's best to learn them more cheaply. So I would say if you're somebody who's thinking about long-term transitioning into this sort of work, then keep your 9-to-5 job, go out and hustle when you have some time and learn the ropes, and then maybe transition. But I also want to give people some context. Is like, I sold $105,000 in books last year. It's only $30,000 in profit. And if you think about $30,000 income, that's not like an amazing income. That's not, I mean, that's probably like, I don't know, minimum wage is like $20,000 or something. So it's not like it's an amazing income, but I also did that basically 2 hours a day throughout the whole year. And I have a 9-to-5 job. So when you add $30,000 onto what you already make at your normal job, then it is pretty significant. So if, I don't want to come across like I'm making boatloads of money. It's like, just put it into context. People who have massive orange bars usually have very, very low margins. So, I have people like comment on my Instagram when I show what I sell, and like, dude, your margins are insane. And they think an insane margin is you sold $105,000 of books and you made 30 grand profit. So for guys out there that are doing hundreds of thousands of dollars, like they're still making good money, but also know that that's not a profit. And it's not easy either. It's like, you got to put in the work, you got to put in the reps. And I would just say, yeah, I don't know if that's good advice, but learn from these guys. Obviously, they're teaching you how to do it. Ask good questions and just learn from your mistakes and scale slowly, scale sustainably.
Johnny B, any last questions for Joji?
What has been the biggest thing you learned during 2022?
2022. I would say the biggest thing, it's not even related to books. It's more online arbitrage. I learned that online arbitrage, traditional OA, is actually much easier than I thought it would be, which is why I kind of want to start transitioning into that a little bit, because I see that it can be very lucrative. And I think that, I think that's one thing. YouTube space, I learned that networking with people is actually really big. I went to the Miami Sellers Conference, which was huge for me. I was able to meet some really cool people. So I would say networking with people is really key. Meeting cool people like yourself is actually really helpful as well. Yeah.
When you leave books, we will miss you, Joji. And
I'm never leaving books. I'm just also gonna add books on top of it. So yeah,
you'll be doing one book a week, and I'm still flipping books.
900 deodorant sticks. Yeah.
Yes, 900 deodorant sticks.
Yeah. So if anybody's interested in finding out, Joji's whole thing, he does live streams on YouTube all the time. If you're listening, Joji, Joji Davenport, Davenport. If you're watching on YouTube, it's literally his YouTube channel. It's just his name. He doesn't try to be all fancy like me and put, the used book guy, because I got to tell people exactly what I do, right? It's like
Awesome.
it's the only way somebody comes to my channel. If I had just my name, I'd be nobody out
They ever
there.
ask you what you do? Like, dude, it's in the name.
Yeah.
So we appreciate y'all listening to this episode, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Resellers Mindset Podcast. Today's full episode and all previous episodes are available to all YouTube members, along with the weekly Zoom call and private Discord. Head on over to youtube.com/theusedbookguy and consider joining for as little as $2.99 a month.